Okay. Looks like we have a caller. Let's bring him in here. Is this Matt?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Matt, how you doing, brother? This is Ken Gerhard. You're on with Scott Marlowe.
Ken, how's it going, buddy?
It's going good.
I took Scott's cryptozoology class a year or so ago from the Florida Keys Community College, and I had a blast. I wanted to call and say hello.
It's really fun, Matt. We miss you. I need to come up with a couple more classes for you to take.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do, buddy.
We had a good time, you and I. Of course, most of my students and I have. So
yeah.
But we got to get you out in the field. We got to get you out in the field sometime.
I would love that. Believe me.
Matt, do you have any questions now that you got Scott on the air? Is there anything you want to ask him about cryptozoology?
Yes, I wanted to ask him about one of my interests is megalodon, and I know Scott had that in his book, and I was wondering if we had any other confirmed sightings.
Well, there have been sightings all over the world. There's been, most of them take place in South Africa, but I suspect a lot of those are contaminated by the great white, which, habituates that coast down there. And some of them might just be slightly oversized. But there have been some interesting encounters since that is a roaming fish species. And now that, the paleontologists for years said that it fed on giant squid. And the fact that there was no giant squid meant that there were no megalodon, since their food sources
they proved that wrong.
Yeah. Well, and our Japanese friends proved that there are indeed giant squids still swimming around. So, if they're out there, then then the megalodon probably is too. Assuming that it survived, as the coelacanth has, into the modern day. So, and of course, there are other shark species like the basking shark, which have been discovered recently, relatively recently. So we could have mistaken identity too. But and I know that some of the sightings of these giant sharks are actually whale sharks. And when somebody finally gets around to saying, okay, the thing had spots, I almost immediately know it's a whale shark.
Yeah. So, but my question is, the megalodon is definitely a carnivore, but the whale shark and the basking shark are plankton feeders.
That's right. But that doesn't mean that people don't see them and immediately go, ah!
True. Very true.
Not everybody are the guys on, let's see, what was that show on, Jackass? No, Jackass.
Oh, Jackass.
Where they're going out there trying to get a gummy from a whale shark. So,
Oh, boy.
All right, Matt. Well, hey, thanks for calling in. It's always good to hear your voice, and excellent question.
Great hearing from both of you. Thank you. It's a great show.
Thanks for calling.
Take care.
You have a great night. Keep searching, brother.
I will, brother. You do.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Yes. So once again, we have interest in these giant sharks. Pretty fascinating stuff. Again, I don't know if I would want to run into one of these things. I do love Jaws. I've got to admit it's one of my favorite movies, but strictly from the safety of my sofa. So,
the shark looked fake. Anyway, now, actually, that's what's kind of fun about cryptozoology, Ken. There's an animal out there for virtually everybody to fall in love with. I've got women who can't, just love house cats. Well, the Jaguarindi's a really fun little cat to try and work with. That's a cryptid in some areas of the world. And then there are other people out there, the anglers like Matt, who want to get out there and they want to hook hook a fish large enough to pull the cabin cruiser down, the fishing boat down with it.
He'll need a bigger boat.
Yeah, and then there's a bigger boat. Yeah, that's a good line. And then there's people out there that like the little bitty things like trilobites, which okay, cool. We've got that kind of cryptid out there. And then there's other that like these big flying birds like yourself.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that, Scott. Let's talk about the thunderbirds. You've written recently in your book Cryptid Creatures of Florida about reports of enormous birds, bird-like creatures. Tell us about those.
Well, we've had several reports. We've had thunderbird-type animals, and I say that because they have feathers. Okay.
Yeah.
The pterodon sightings don't have feathers, so we're talking about two different things. But we've had some down in the Everglades and by crane operators working on the dredging projects down there. And we've had people in Tampa that have seen them. Now, given that most of the people around here are very familiar with turkey vultures, we've got plenty of them. I think people kind of know what they're looking at and can judge the size of these things. The only problem that you've got is when you're looking at them against the sky, it can be very misleading, and not all the reports are credible that way. But when you've got a size reference to go by, and this thing is absolutely enormous compared to any other type of bird, that's a different story. And the ones that I reported in the book, that's the case with them. And, of course, we've also had people who claim to have seen pterodons or pterodactyls. And I've come up with a couple of explanations, although some of them might be credible. Every now and then the great frigate bird from Central America and the Galapagos gets blown off course, and they're seen in South Florida, and their profile in the air kind of looks a little bit like a pterodactyl. And then there are people down here that just don't know what they're talking about. I mean, one comical story I tell in the book is about a couple of legal beagles from Boston who come down here to Palm Beach, and they're sitting out and enjoying an afternoon barbecue on their back patio, which is all screened in, and they hear this horrible sound, and they call me in a total panic that there's pterodactyls, apparently flying over their house every evening at 5 o'clock. So I go down there, and we're relaxing and having a drink on the patio, and there comes this racket, and they're going, there, see, that's a pterodactyl. Here's a pterodactyl. And of course, I'm going like, guys, have you ever heard of a sand crane? Then because they do make a science fiction kind of cackle that sounds pterodactylish. But then we've had people down here developing stealth drones at the University of Florida, shaped like, guess what? A pterodactyl. So people may have been seeing something that looked like a pterodactyl, but it was actually a mechanical device. So there's always an answer. You just have to dig deep enough and long enough in order to find it.
Well, good points. Richard in the chat room is bringing up the fact that since pterosaurs apparently were hairy creatures, or they possessed, I suppose you could call them proto-feathers, or some did, can we assume that reports of hairless or featherless pterosaurs are just not credible?
Well, it depends on how close you're viewing it. I mean, if you're up close and personal, like the three teachers outside of San Antonio that found one on the road staring at them and got within a car length, but if you're going to report it from 400 yards, I don't think you're going to see the equivalent of pin feathers too well.
That's a good point, and I'd also like to add that our good friend Lee Hales, who's also a paleontologist, knows many people that work in the field, and from what they've told me, we really just don't know that much about pterosaurs. I mean, we've gotten some lucky with some of these fossil finds, but as far as what they really look like, how they really behaved, a lot of that is conjecture at this point. So. Well,
yeah, and I think you know, but I'm not sure that the public knows that I helped Monster Quest on the pterosaur in New Guinea show that they did, and actually helped do some of the production. Now, when pterosaurs actually lived, according to the fossil record, the island of New Guinea did not exist. So the idea that you would have that kind of animal on New Guinea is probably not true because they were very territorial. Now, that being said, there are reports of large owl species that hole up in these caves where there's bioluminescent bacteria and algae growing on the wall, and their wings get coated with this stuff. And when they go out flying at night, they glow for a while that stuff is on their feathers. And sometimes it drips. And if you look at some of the stories about dragons and things that appear in European literature and what have you, many of them talk about sparks that drip from their wings. Well, there's a possible answer for you.
Giant glowing owls. Well, that would certainly be a sight, and I can see why someone might take notice of that.
Well, fly over the Pacific and some of the oceans with all the lights out on a plane at night and see how much bioluminescence you see in the water. Tons of it. And many of these animals eat bioluminescent, including the pterodactyls, by the way, eat bioluminescent sea life. So could it transfer? Sure.
Well, since we're talking about giant owls, Scott, someone brought up in the chat room Mothman, and I know you have a theory with regard to Mothman, which is kind of in the fringe areas of cryptozoology, because many people view it as some type of specter or supernatural phenomenon. What are your thoughts on Mothman?
Well, we have a variety of Mothman, if you will, down here in Florida. We call the Dixie Demon or the Phantom Flyer. And it's interesting because while Mothman doesn't appear to be particularly violent, as in the West Virginian variety that you went up to work with Lauren on for that William Shatner episode, down here it's pretty violent. It attacks mobile homes. It attacks moving vehicles. It has not as yet attacked a person, but if you look at some of the damage that is reported to have been done by this animal, it's pretty extreme. But I don't know yet whether it is a very, very large owl that has taken an immense dislike to metal, or what could be driving this thing. But it's getting kind of frightening. But most of these encounters have been around the Ocala National Forest and up near Old Town and up in the Panhandle. So, and that's Old Town, not in Kissimmee. That's Old Town, the town named Old Town, up off of 27 on the way to Tallahassee. So, I don't know yet what those are. I'm working on a sequel to my book in which that will appear along with some other animals. I've found 16 other animals to add to the 21 that appear in my original book. So we have about 30 different cryptids down here in Florida.
And it's a great book. And just to throw it out there for our listeners, if anyone is interested in learning more about the mystery animals of Florida, Scott does have a book called Cryptid Creatures of Florida. Scott, is that available on Amazon? Where can people find copies of that?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and virtually all over the place now. I mean, it's almost all online. I think some bookstores are stocking it if it's requested. But I don't know if any of them have actually got it on the shelf, but I know you can order it online and through the bookstores.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the sequel.
And we got Dinosauria down here too. Although Florida, again, in the dinosaur era, didn't exist. It wasn't really much more than a sandbar. But I'm researching one story now that's particularly interesting and has piqued my curiosity, where a paratrooper trainee was flying over the Everglades and had a malfunction with his jet and jettisoned himself from the jet, got trapped about 30 feet up in the tree down in the Everglades in one of the hammocks. And the last radio call they got from him was panicked because a, quote, dinosaur was coming towards him, unquote. They never found him, but they did find the bloody remains of his parachute 30 feet in the air. Shredded.
Wow. That's pretty scary stuff there, Scott. You're telling me there's a carnivorous dinosaur down there and not to parachute into the wrong area. Or you might end up on the menu. That's,
of course.
Well, we certainly, there's a precedent. I mean, those of our listeners who are very familiar with cryptozoology, I'm sure have heard of the Mokele Mbembe, which are the alleged dinosaurs in Africa. Someone earlier mentioned the Malanatuka. There's the Buru from India. So now we're getting really romantic.
Version.
Yes, we're getting into some of the romantic aspect of cryptozoology.
Well, nothing piques interest in anything more than mayhem.
Well put. Well said.
I mean,
Scott, let's get into...
There got to be a protagonist in the story, or there's no story.
Absolutely. Scott, let's since we got a few minutes left here, let's get into some of the weirder aspects of cryptozoology, because I really do see the field evolving. We touched on Mothman a little bit. So someone in the chat room was mentioning the red glowing eyes that are often associated with certain cryptids, or the fact that in some cases Bigfoot has been reputed to just vanish before people's eyes. Do you give much credence to that at all? Could there be, at least in some of these cases, could there be something supernatural going on, something paranormal with regard to...
Well, the color of the eyes
cryptids?
is just a function of how their eyes work in the dark and their eye anatomy, and light shining into them. Many of these creatures are probably nocturnal and therefore have substantially different eyes than we do. And of course, if they dilate, you get these great big pupils, and you can see back to the retina glows. So it's kind of interesting. And owls do have red and orange eyes, so in the dark. So that's not particularly unusual. Now, when you start talking about some of the other things that are really strange, the idea of an animal, and I get this all the time, Bigfoot just disappeared into a dimensional doorway. Right in front of me, yada yada yada. I don't buy that stuff. For one thing, let's put it this way: when I started all of this stuff, I was a pre-med major. I had advanced placement in physics, chemistry, biology, and virtually all of the sciences. For a dimensional doorway to open up, the amount of energy required and the resulting electromagnetic interference is so extreme that communications within 100 miles would be interrupted. So there is no chance in hell that that's happening, unless there's some kind of dampening field associated with it that science has no clue about at this point. So, let's leave Star Trek behind, folks. I'm a Trekkie, but, I know where to draw the line between real and fantasy. And, of course, we could get into a discussion that would probably insult the hell out of everybody. The one that Diane or Denise Stoner and I do on the psychology of eyewitnesses that people don't want to hear, but let's just say there's a lot of delusionals out there.
Well, certainly I've dealt with some people that were, a little bit out there too, Scott. But we can't always walk in their shoes. So if someone says that they saw a werewolf running across their lawn in Wisconsin, I certainly can't refute that because I wasn't there.
And I'm not saying that I don't believe them. They believe it. Okay?
Yeah.
They could probably even pass a lie detector test. I'm not suggesting that they don't believe it. And it is real to them. But is it real in fact is another issue.
Well, there's also another suggestion that, I work with a lot of people in the paranormal field too, and it's been suggested to me that perhaps some of these cryptids could actually be, I guess if you believe this sort of thing, spirit manifestations. If there were, if people die and become ghosts, why couldn't a pterodactyl or a gigantopithecus die and then manifest as something else? Are we getting too weird here, Scott? I don't know.
No, there are always things in the world that we don't understand, and that's actually part of what makes living worthwhile. Because then we got something that we can pique our interest, and we can research and try to find an answer to. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's plausible. Is it possible? Lots of things are possible. Is it plausible based on what we know? No. So, let's find out what we don't know. And we can only do that by applying what we do know.
Oh, well, that's definitely well put, and I think you kind of created a nice unified motif for the whole show here as we get close to the end, because I think everyone that's listening in tonight is probably open-minded enough to acknowledge that there certainly are things in our world that we do not understand, and that's what makes life interesting, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Why do you think I do this? If I knew everything, I wouldn't need to do what I do. So, for people to run around saying, "Oh, he thinks he knows everything," you're way off the mark, guys. that's not the case. The more I learn I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think humility is something that we definitely have to keep in mind as researchers. Very fortunate to have more scientific minds like yourself sort of becoming involved or having been involved for years now, because there certainly are some fringe elements in the field of cryptozoology. And as you said earlier, diversity is important, and it is important to have these differing points of view. But on the other hand, the doctrine of cryptozoology was in fact conceived and founded by a zoologist, and it, for all intents and purposes, should remain grounded, I think, within the field of zoology. We do have to proceed with those types of beliefs and what am I trying to say here? Help me, Scott.
Well, you got to.
You know what I'm saying.
If we accept that evolution is a fact, okay, then there has to be a clearly defined lineage to explain an animal. And at this juncture, I mean, I don't want to insult all the creationists out there. I'm sorry if I do. But at this point, the evidence is so clear that evolution is a fact that to suggest that these things are conjured out of nothing is contrary to what we know. Now, if you introduce, as is always the case, if you can't explain it with what we have here on terrestrial science, let's introduce E.T. Well, okay, but show me an E.T., show me his laboratory, then talk to me.
Right. Well, I'd go for that. I've often fantasized about being Roy Neary at the end of Close Encounters. Sure, take me aboard.
Believe me, if I had...
I'm getting bored on this planet.
if I had half an opportunity to get beamed up to the mothership, believe me, I'd go. What? There we go. Was that E.T. saying, oops?
Oh, gosh.
If the line goes dead in mid-sip. But, I haven't had them show up outside my bedroom window yet and try to pass me through the wall, so what can I say?
Well, me either. At least I don't remember if they did. They blocked me well.
Let's put it this way. If they did, they sent me back. That should tell you plenty.
Scott, before we close here, brother, is there anything kind of new and exciting you're working on? Anything else you want to plug? Anything coming up? Any public appearances? Or?
Well, I'm working on a book signing at Cinematique in Daytona. At this point, the working date, don't cast this in bronze, folks, and show up expecting it, because I don't know yet. I'll put it on Facebook and let other people know when I'm sure. But on the 28th of August, I should be appearing, I hope, with Charlie Carlson and others. And we'll actually probably show a couple of the films and things that I've done, in addition to have the book signing and maybe do a little prezo with it. I'm talking with the folks that make the Swamp Ape beer, and we're talking about a similar book signing over there when they open up their new tasting room in Port Canaveral, which also will be sometime in August or September. And those are the things that I've got in the works right now, along with a couple of film projects I'm working on. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll be back and be asked to come back on the air again and talk to you here. That would be nice. But I can be found on Facebook, and I'm pretty much open to conversation. So, just let me know, send me a note. Ask me a question if you see me online, and friend me if you like, and we'll keep you up to date on what's happening.
Well, very fascinating material indeed, Scott. You are very knowledgeable, sir. And we've got your link to Pangea Institute in the chat room as well, so anyone that wants to check out Scott or Pangea Institute is definitely encouraged to do so. If I can put in a personal plug here, I will be appearing at the PBTN Paranormal Conference in Waverly, Ohio on July 28th and 29th. So anyone that's interested in the unexplained that lives in the greater Ohio area, I encourage you to come out, because I'm going to be doing some cryptozoology lectures as well.
Cool.
So, yeah, good stuff. both of us.
Well, and I'll probably have my cryptozoology class at Florida Keys Community College available again at the end of August. So you might want to contact the college. If I can, I'll give them the phone number down there, or ask for Kathy Torres, because she's my department head and she'll know what's going on. But it's 305-296-9081.
Awesome. Very, very cool, Scott. Well, once again, brother, I want to thank you for coming on. Definitely enjoyed it, as always, and I'm sure we'll be talking in the days to come. I just want to remind our listeners that you have been listening to Epic Voyagers Radio. If you want to find out more about Epic Voyagers, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. And for my very gracious and knowledgeable guest, Scott Marlowe, this is Ken Gerhard for Epic Voyagers. Thanking you all and wishing you a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Please join us again next Monday evening for Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council's Epic Voyages. I'm Roger Peacock for Epic. Until next time.